Hi everyone, as Dr. Sturgeon mentioned, I'm Sara Duffey. I'm the Clinical Trial Recruitment and Education Coordinator for the Lurie Cancer Center. And as a patient navigator, I really encourage my patients to stay abreast of clinical trials, their treatment options, in addition to their cancer diagnosis, just so they can stay active in their cancer treatment and know what's going on with their own health. I realize there are a lot of resources out there to learn about cancer, to learn about clinical trials. I didn't really realize how confusing it was until I put this presentation together. So I have a better understanding now of what it can be like for patients to actually go out there who don't have a patient navigator. So hopefully this will clarify some questions or make it easier for you. I do want you to know that you can reach out to me, but there are other resources available, and hopefully this will clarify and make things a little bit easier for you. But before I talk about the resources that are available to you, I want to talk just a little bit about the basics of clinical trials, because some of you may or may not be aware of it. And so I'm going to go over that, and then I'll talk about the resources and take your questions after that. So the most fundamental question is, what is a clinical trial? Clinical trials test a drug or a combination of drugs in a patient population to see if they are safe as well as effective. So the goal is to gain regulatory approval so the drug can be made commercially available and ultimately extend standard treatment options for patients. Clinical trials are divided into interventional and non-interventional trials. Most of the trials we conduct in the Cancer Center are to treat different types of cancer, but we also have a chemoprevention department that enrolls patients that either have had cancer or are at a high risk of developing cancer. And then there are non-interventional trials, and those are also known as observational trials. So observational trials offer no intervention in the care of a patient, but an example of that could be a quality of life trial that studies either treatment side effects or side effects of a patient's disease. So just so you have a little bit of terminology when someone is talking with you about a clinical trial, clinical trials are also known as research studies. They may abbreviate it, just call it a trial. They may just call it the study, but all those mean the same thing. When you hear about, or if you're doing research into clinical trials, you may see open label study of, and then the drug name, or blinded study. When a trial is blinded, that means that the patient is not aware of the dosing that the patient is receiving, or the drug identity. Double blind means that neither the patient nor the clinician is aware of the dosing assignment. And then open label is just non-blinded, so everyone knows what your dose is. And a trial protocol is the written document that describes how the drug is to be given, the frequency, at what dose, as well as any procedures that are required by the FDA throughout the study, such as lab draws or CT scans. And all trials have inclusion criteria, eligibility criteria, to make sure that everyone is the same, so that the results are generalizable. Clinical trials are conducted in a series of steps, which are called phases, and there are 4 of them. I'll explain what each phase means in another slide, but each phase answers a different research question. And then the informed consent is a process of learning about the clinical trial, as well as your other treatment options when you are discussing the potential of participating in a clinical trial. Most of clinical trials are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, so pharmaceutical companies who are looking to get their drug approved by the FDA. But sometimes research oncologists at Northwestern, for instance, or other academic institutions conduct clinical trials using an approved drug for one cancer type to see if it works in a different type of cancer. And then the NCI has a clinical trial network that includes groups in their respective specialty that collaborate and they enroll patients nationwide. So the clinical trial phases, phase 1 trials are the first in human trials, and these studies are designed to determine the safest dose, which is known as the maximum tolerated dose. And so that is the main objective of a phase 1 trial. Phase 2 trials take that dose and they look at whether or not the dose is actually effective. And after the phase 2 trial is completed, if the results appear promising, then phase 3 trials are conducted, which typically are randomized trials where they are comparing the investigational drug with the standard of care treatment to see if it really is any better than what's currently available. And typically it's the data from those phase 3 trials that's used when drug companies decide to file with the FDA for approval. So those phase 3 trials can have up to 1,000 patients or even more. And then phase 4 trials are for ongoing safety data, usually after an FDA approval. So I'm going to jump into the resources to locate clinical trials. Clinicaltrials.gov is one of the most extensive databases. It's a registry of all available trials across all cancer types. This is a worldwide database, so these are trials that are available not just in the United States, but globally. And when you log into clinicaltrials.gov, the website allows you to filter based on your desired location, the disease that you're interested in, as well as the phase of the trial. And it will help you find trials that are either close to you or that match your the filter that you applied. So the other thing that clinicaltrials.gov has is they have trial results for trials that are closed. So that's of interest to a lot of patients. A lot of patients want to know other trials that have been conducted using a specific drug, and this has some interesting information on that. The National Cancer Institute has a catalog of their trials as well on cancer.gov. The difference between cancer.gov and clinicaltrials.gov is that cancer.gov contains trials that are conducted in the United States only. So again, the trials that are found on cancer.gov are also in clinicaltrials.gov, so you don't replicate your efforts. I noticed that when I was doing some searches, I realized that clinical trials were available on a lot of different websites. So the most extensive is the clinicaltrials.gov. This cancer.gov is limited just to cancer trials, just to clinical trials that are conducted within the United States. And it's also, I think, a great resource to learn about cancer in general and the research the NCI is doing in cancer prevention, early detection, as well as the treatment of cancer. And then we have yet the NIH. The National Institutes of Health also conducts their own trials across many diseases, including cancer. So it's not limited to just cancer. One thing to know if you do visit this website and consider trials, these trials are available only at the National Institutes of Health, which is in Bethesda, Maryland. But they also have an Office of Patient Recruitment that can help patients navigate. So they also have a registry, they have registry trials, which are important. They gather a lot of information about patients with the same disease and around a specific diagnosis that can help understand the disease better. And the American Society for Clinical Oncologists is also known as ASCO, has a patient education website. I really like this website because it offers up-to-date news about treatment advances for patients. All the information is oncologist approved. They have podcasts that are scientific yet patient-friendly. And I think it's a great way to learn about the disease process as well as treatments that are coming down the pipeline without having overwhelming details. But I think it's an excellent resource. They also have a web-based application called Pre-Act, and that's for clinical trial education. And I think that that's a great resource. I love cancer.net just even for myself. It's really, really informative, and I really encourage patients to utilize that. And then the Robert H. Lurie Comprehensive Cancer Center, we have over 300 active cancer clinical trials going on phase 1, 2, and 3, as well as developmental therapeutics. And then we have trials that involve supportive care and survivorship as well. And that's it. Questions, comments, please direct to me, and my information is here. I also provided slide handout for all of you when you checked in. I hope that all of you were able to grab a packet, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions on clinical trials, because I'm here to help. Thank you.